When I first saw the underconsumption trend, I was like, isn't that just how we all live? But now I'm not so sure, so let's talk about it. Hello my friends, and welcome to another chat with me while I crochet, maybe. No, I think I will crochet. But today we're talking about underconsumption. The underconsumption trend, underconsumption core, whatever you may call it, that is this week's topic. If you're new here, I'm Carla. I make cultural commentary videos like these, as well as vlogs about my life in London, doing some crafts, some crochet, some sewing, learning languages, just, you know, wholesome, chill vlogs and videos that I like to post. So if you want to be a part of this lovely little community that we're growing, then please do join. Everyone is so supportive and so kind, so I'm happy you clicked on this video. Now let's get into it. Let's just ignore the fact as well that this mic really clashes with my outfit. We're enjoying some orange wine today. And we're also going to be working on the sleeve of the beach cover-up that I've been working on in my past, I don't know how many videos. Also, if you don't care about any of my crochet updates, I have timestamps in this video. This is one sleeve of two. It's nearly done, but this is how much yarn I have. And this yarn is out of stock. So I'm waiting for it to be back in stock. They said late August, and now they're saying late September. I'm going on holiday in October that I hope will still be beach weather. I don't know if that's actually going to happen, but regardless, this is what we're working on. So what exactly is the underconsumption trend or underconsumption core? I would define it as the romanticization of buying less and using more of what you have. This trend definitely popped off on TikTok probably around July of 2024, and it comes after the de-influencing trend of even earlier in the year. And I think we can all agree that there are probably a few different driving factors of this new trend or new core on TikTok or on social media in general, which would be economic slumps around the world, recessions, and increasing awareness of the environmental impact of our consumer choices. And lumped into that, I think people becoming more aware of how the way they consume can be a form of activism, even if a really small one. Some examples of this underconsumption trend and the types of videos you might see include mending, fixing a pair of leggings or a pair of shoes or a shirt instead of just throwing it away or donating it to a charity shop or a thrift store that might end up having to put it in the landfill anyways. Not having multiples of the same product, so having just one shampoo, one body soap, one face wash, even just one mascara or one lipstick. And thanks to mending or tailoring your clothes, another example of these sort of underconsumption videos is having clothes for many, many years. People will use this video to romanticize the fact that they've been wearing the same dress every summer for the past 7 years, or that their favorite sneakers have lasted them 4 summers walking around New York City. So yeah, these are the main types of underconsumption videos you will see: mending, having one of each product, and having clothes for many years, aka how many people already live. Especially in lower income families or in immigrant families or both, it is very common to practice these different activities, you know? If you're watching this and you come from an immigrant family or a low income family or both, let me know if you agree with this, because I feel like there are definitely things that we would have done as children that our parents taught us that we take into our lives now, like fixing a pair of clothes or wearing the same sneakers for years. I think this way of living is completely normal and not something that people even give much thought to outside of the West. And I want to say even outside of the US. I've only lived in Western countries, you know, France, the UK, and the US, and I've spent a lot of time in Spain because that's where my sister lives. But even in French and Spanish culture, which are both Western cultures, you will see some of these underconsumption core activities practiced in day-to-day life by people of all ages. For example, in France and Spain, I feel like you're way less likely to see someone covering everything in saran wrap or cling film. Even here in the UK, which is obviously a very, very Western country, I think there's much more of a culture of not throwing out things that are in your fridge, and there's even food labels that say like, smell it, look at it, give it a little taste and see if it's bad, instead of just going by the best by date. Like, don't waste food if it's clearly fine, even though it's past the date, which I think living in the US, it's much more accepted to just be like, oh, this box of spinach, gone. which I'm not saying that that doesn't happen in other countries outside of the US, but I do think that when we say the underconsumption trend is the way that a lot of people live, this even does include Western countries that are wealthy, but just aren't the US. So I'm going to be referencing this article from The Guardian titled, "It is okay to be content with your simple life. Is underconsumption core the answer to too much shopping?" Which was an article they wrote in response to this underconsumption trend, primarily the TikToks around it. And for this article, they interviewed Shanu Walpita, who is a trend forecaster teaching in the communications department at the London College of Fashion. She said, "The irony is that there is an element of privilege to choosing to actively lean into underconsumption and turn it into a form of viral, shareable content." I think when people raise this point, that this is just how most people live, it's not saying therefore you shouldn't do it and therefore you shouldn't talk about it and post about it. I think it's more pointing out that for the first time ever, this person isn't buying an extra pair of leggings because they already have 10 pairs of leggings. Isn't them discovering something new that they like must share with the world. Yeah, I think it's still important to talk about it because a lot of people do have a shopping problem, especially with how cheap you can get some clothing for, which we'll talk about fast fashion later. But I guess it can just come off strange to people who have lived this way all their lives, and you're promoting it as something novel or groundbreaking. So Shani Walpita from the London College of Fashion acknowledges this. She says that there's an irony and that there's an element of privilege that you can choose to participate in the underconsumption trend for clout or for a few thousand views on TikTok or just to participate in a fleeting video trend. And she even brings up a good point that it's not just lower income countries or communities that have always practiced these different underconsumption core activities, and that they're not necessarily linked to class, that it's more of a cultural thing. And she describes them as cultural necessities and signifiers of care. And I thought the phrase signifiers of care was interesting because it's saying, you know, I'm not overbuying household decor or household necessities that aren't actually necessities because I can't afford to. It is because there's a culture of caring about your consumer choices or caring about not wasting things. But I think her point to acknowledge that people do this all around the world, regardless of class, is important to the discussion. However, some would argue that this trend, even if it can be a bit tone deaf to people who have always lived this way, the underconsumption way, is that it's still a net positive. So this Guardian article also interviewed a trend specialist from Depop called Agus Panzoni, who also acknowledged the same sort of issue with this trend as Walpita, saying that it glamorizes the experience of those who don't have the means to not engage in underconsumption core. Basically, I think the main issue people have with this is glamorizing poverty. But she raises a really good point, which is why I said we're going to talk about fast fashion later. She said, yes, this trend can somewhat glamorize poverty, but in the era of Temu and Shein, where new clothing and household items can be found at incredibly low prices, there's a net positive in a trend that encourages us to appreciate the look of quality, well-used products. And I think this is a really good point because in this day and age, you can no longer say that the only people who have an issue with overconsumption are those who have a lot of money and the means to buy a lot. And this is an issue with the brands that I have. So my issue is with these companies that prey on individuals who might not have a lot of money and enticing them with their insanely low prices and their insanely low quality goods that they'll just have to keep buying again and again and again. Of course, we all have agency and individual choice. I feel like I talk about this a lot in my sort of video essay commentary videos about the fact that yes, our individual actions matter, and we can't deny the fact that it might be simpler for, you know, a single mom with 3 kids to do her back to school shopping for her children on Shein in a big massive haul. I think it's really, really difficult because we all have the opportunity to make better consumer choices, but there's something to be said for the amount of pressure put on people to have the next best thing, or even if they know that they could buy a higher quality item for more money, if they don't have that money, then, you know, why wouldn't they get the cheaper option? Like, I could talk about that forever, so let me know what you think, because Yeah. And regardless of this trend seeming silly to some people because it's how so much of the world already lives, I do think it's probably the best trend to come out of social media in a long while, aside from very demure, very mindful. And especially because, you know, this is coming after the Stanley Cup trend, when we had people running and buying insane amounts of Stanley Cups. This underconsumption trend also comes alongside the proliferation of Shein hauls, because those haven't stopped, and the growing popularity of TikTok Shop, which is basically Shein and Temu, but conveniently in the TikTok app. And I think what's powerful about this underconsumption trend is that it's not glamorous in the way that much of social media is. And I think that speaks to, you know, the cultural impact that I was talking about a bit earlier, that how can we blame someone who maybe doesn't have a lot of money to spend for feeling pressure to have a really trendy top? Like, yes, I don't think you need to buy it, but I can't blame you for wanting to buy it. And none of us are perfect. We all buy things that we don't actually need. And I think the reason why people feel the need to overconsume is because a lot of the creators that you'll see on social media live glamorous lives, and they might be promoting products to you that are really expensive and you want the dupe version of. Or maybe they're promoting the more affordable option, but constantly, so you feel like you can keep up with them and you keep buying and you keep buying. And what I do like about this underconsumption trend is that it's been a chance for real people who live normal, regular lives to share what their life actually looks like. And it reminds you as a viewer and as a consumer that what you have is actually just fine. And I guess it's a format of content that doesn't actually make you feel like you're lacking something, which I think is powerful, even if it does seem a bit silly, because so many of us live already in the way that the underconsumption core trend shows. But the difference is that this trend allows you to show this normal way of living in a romantic light. Or maybe not even in a romantic light, but just like an honest light. I want to talk a little bit about whether or not this has changed much. Walmart and Target each reported second quarter sales were up, while Starbucks, McDonald's, and Home Depot posted declines. Consumers are clearly sticking to the basics, and some are going a step further. And I don't know if I really agree with this analysis. I think it's kind of trying to extrapolate a little bit. I think, you know, sales being up at Walmart and Target, but not at Starbucks and McDonald's and Home Depot, could have to do more with the boycott, or people just being strapped for cash in the current economy and needing to stick to the basics, not necessarily because of underconsumption core. So I think underconsumption core is probably more a symptom of economic downturn than a cause of it. Forbes also quoted this stat from Credit Karma, which I assume came from a survey. I don't know what the sample size was, but let's just read it. A third of Gen Z consumers admit to a shopping addiction, according to Credit Karma. So these are kind of two conflicting statements or conclusions from the Forbes article, saying that people are sticking to the basics because they're focusing on underconsumption. But then also a third of Gen Z admits they have a shopping addiction. Like, it's not really adding up. My take is that, you know, this probably hasn't changed much, but we can't deny a shift in the culture and the fact that that could have a huge impact over, you know, the months and the years to come. If people, consumers, viewers, whatever, try to stay focused on rejecting the capitalistic forces that are constantly telling them to buy more and use more and want more. Sabrina, who is a creator on TikTok, sabrina.sustainable.life, says underconsumption core videos show items that might not be the newest, but still work. Which this mic is the perfect example of. The fluffy bit somehow became very loose and won't stay on, so there's a rubber band around it. Have I considered buying a new one? Yes, but only because it's ugly, not because it doesn't work. I've put this rubber band on like once, months ago, and it stayed there. So it's fine. It's kind of ugly, but it works. And this mindset that Sabrina mentioned, may not be the newest, but it works, is something that I use to keep myself in check when I feel myself wanting to buy something that I probably don't need. And I'm not saying I don't ever buy things that I don't need. Of course I do. Like, I just bought a latte yesterday. Like, Of course I do that. That mindset has genuinely helped me so much to save money and to not overconsume and to not have to buy like things from Amazon because I feel like I need them and they're going to make my life better when the version I have is working just fine. And if that doesn't work for you with trying to sort of temper your desire to overconsume, I have one other tip for you, and that is to get a hobby. You will be so surprised by how having a creative outlet, or maybe if you're not creative, just having some sort of outlet, if it's physical or mental or whatever, how much that takes away your desire to buy something new. Like next time you want to buy something, start doing a hobby and then tell me after 1 hour, 30 minutes of doing that, if you still want to buy that thing, because you probably won't want to. I think we hear a lot that people buy things to fill the void. And, you know, I always heard that, but I thought, I'm not one of those people. I never felt like I had a big shopping addiction, but I've definitely fallen victim to pressures to buy things that I don't need, and I have bought plenty of things that I don't need. But because I never felt like I had a big issue, I never thought that when I bought things, it was to fill a void. Like, I just didn't think that was me, even though I knew it was possible for other people. But I think you'll see that when you have hobbies or other things to do, you have way less time to even think about the things that you need to have an easier life or to have a more aesthetic life. And I think it's because you're getting fulfillment from elsewhere. So even if you don't have a shopping addiction and actively know that you're getting emotional fulfillment from shopping, I think to some extent, whenever we buy something that's not a necessity, it is to fill some sort of void or to feel fulfilled in that moment. I'm not saying that means we should never do it. Like, of course, you should have enjoyment in your life. But maybe if you feel like you're over-consuming, the answer might be to get fulfillment from elsewhere. I don't know. Just take it from me as someone who didn't feel like I was shopping to fill the void. I genuinely feel like when I'm focusing more on my hobbies, I don't even think about things that I need to buy, aside from more yarn. Well, I think that brings us to a close of today's video. Please do like this video if you did like it, because it helps me a lot. Leave a comment because I reply to every single comment. And if you want to join us, I'd be so grateful if you hit subscribe as well. Why not? Why not? I'm posting every week. I'm very consistent. And in September, I'm trying to post twice a week. So if you've been missing some of your YouTubers who aren't active anymore, I could be your new girl. I'm just saying, the invite is open. No, but seriously, thank you so much for being here. I hope you did enjoy this little chat and crochet with me session, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.